Have you ever found yourself walking on eggshells around someone, constantly second-guessing your own words and feelings? Maybe you've been in conversations where no matter what you say, it gets twisted back around to make you the problem. If you're nodding along, you might be dealing with something more serious than just a difficult person. You could be facing a narcissist. After decades of watching people struggle in these toxic dynamics, I've discovered something remarkable. There's one simple phrase, just 7 words, that can completely shift the power balance. When you use it consistently, something extraordinary happens. The person who once had you questioning your own reality suddenly loses their grip on you. They become the one who's uncertain, the one who's afraid. What I'm about to share with you isn't about getting revenge or playing mind games. It's about reclaiming your dignity, your peace of mind, and your emotional freedom. Because if you're tired of feeling drained, confused, and constantly defending yourself to someone who never seems to listen, then you deserve to know this truth. You deserve to understand that their behavior isn't your fault. And more importantly, you have the power to stop it. The hidden world of narcissistic control. When you're dealing with a narcissist, the first and most important thing to understand is that their behavior follows a predictable pattern. They're not reacting to you personally as much as they're following a script they've used countless times before. Narcissists operate from a place of deep insecurity, but they mask it with arrogance, manipulation, and an overwhelming need for control. They often target people who are naturally empathetic, kind, and self-reflective. If you're someone who gives others the benefit of the doubt, who tries to see the best in people, who believes in second chances, you've essentially painted a target on your back. These beautiful qualities that make you a wonderful human being also make you vulnerable to their tactics. Meet Sarah, a retired teacher from Ohio. For 15 years, she was married to someone who slowly convinced her that she was too sensitive, too emotional, too demanding. Every argument ended with her apologizing, even when she couldn't remember what she'd done wrong. I thought if I could just be more understanding, more patient, he'd finally see how much I loved him. She told me. I didn't realize he was rewriting history every single day. What Sarah experienced is called gaslighting, and it's one of the narcissist's favorite weapons. They systematically undermine your confidence in your own perceptions. They'll deny saying things you clearly heard, minimize your feelings, or convince you that your memory is faulty. Over time, this creates a fog of confusion where you start to doubt your own reality. The psychological impact is devastating. Your brain, designed to seek consistency and truth, becomes trapped in a cycle of cognitive dissonance. You know something feels wrong, but you can't quite put your finger on what it is. This internal struggle is exhausting, and it's exactly what keeps you trapped in their web. Prevention tip: start keeping a private journal of interactions. Write down what was said, when it happened, and how it made you feel. This becomes your anchor to reality when they try to rewrite history. The most liberating moment comes when you realize that their treatment of you has nothing to do with your worth as a person and everything to do with their need to maintain control. The 3 pillars of narcissistic manipulation. Every narcissist operates using 3 fundamental strategies. They need control, they crave validation, and they thrive on creating confusion. Understanding these 3 pillars is like having a roadmap to their behavior. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Control is their foundation. They need to feel like they're the puppeteer pulling all the strings. This might look like making decisions without consulting you, dismissing your opinions, ignoring your boundaries, or creating rules that only apply to you. Sometimes it's subtle, like always choosing where you eat dinner or interrupting you mid-sentence. Other times it's blatant, like exploding when you make plans without asking permission first. Validation is their oxygen. They need constant admiration, praise, and attention, not just to feel good, but to function emotionally. When you compliment them, agree with them, or put their needs first, you're feeding their ego. But the moment you withhold that validation, when you say no, express disagreement, or focus on yourself. They react as if you've personally attacked them. Here's what makes it especially cruel. They'll often surround themselves with people who constantly reinforce their narrative while systematically silencing anyone who dares to challenge them. If you're not feeding their ego, you're threatening their entire sense of self. The science behind it. Psychologists have found that narcissists have abnormal activity in the brain regions, responsible for empathy and self-awareness. This isn't an excuse for their behavior, but it explains why logical conversations often feel impossible. Confusion is their secret weapon. They intentionally blur the lines between truth and lies, love and control, care and manipulation. They want you questioning your memory, your emotions, your decisions. A confused person is much easier to control than someone who trusts their own instincts. Quick check. If you find yourself constantly explaining your feelings, defending your reactions, or wondering if you're too sensitive, you're likely dealing with someone who uses confusion as a control tactic. Understanding these three pillars allows you to step back and see their behavior for what it really is. Calculated moves in a game you never agreed to play. The power of emotional detachment. The most powerful thing you can do when dealing with a narcissist is to stop feeding their need for emotional control. This doesn't mean becoming cold or heartless. It means protecting your energy and refusing to engage in their psychological games. Narcissists want reactions. They want tears, anger, confusion, desperate explanations. When you argue, beg, plead, or defend yourself endlessly, you're giving them exactly what they crave. It confirms their power over you and keeps you trapped in their toxic cycle. Emotional detachment looks like keeping your tone neutral, your words minimal, and your boundaries solid. It's responding instead of reacting. When they try to bait you into an argument, you might simply say, "I see we disagree," and change the subject or leave the room. Consider Robert, a 72-year-old grandfather who spent years trying to have rational conversations with his narcissistic adult son. I'd prepare for hours before our phone calls, thinking if I just explained things the right way, he'd finally understand. But every conversation left me drained and more confused than before. The breakthrough came when Robert stopped trying to convince his son of anything. I started treating our conversations like weather reports. I'd listen to what he said, acknowledge it with something neutral like, "I hear you," and then I'd change the subject or end the call. The change was remarkable. He couldn't hook me emotionally anymore. The psychology. When you stop providing emotional reactions, narcissists often escalate their behavior initially. This is called an extinction burst in psychology. They're trying harder to get the reaction they're used to receiving, but if you stay consistent, they eventually give up and look for supply elsewhere. Detachment also means holding your boundaries without guilt. Narcissists are experts at pushing limits. They'll test you repeatedly to see if you'll cave. They might guilt trip you, accuse you of being cold, or pretend not to understand what you're asking for. Your job is to remain steady and stick to your boundaries. Regardless of their reaction, remember, detachment protects your energy. Narcissists are emotional vampires who drain you with their constant needs, shifting moods, and psychological warfare. When you step back mentally and emotionally, you start to heal and reconnect with who you really are. Calm, firm detachment isn't weakness. It's one of the strongest, most self-respecting responses you can have. The game-changing sentence. There is one sentence that can completely shift the power dynamic with a narcissist, and it's this: "I'm not available for this conversation." It's simple, calm, and devastatingly effective. Most importantly, it does something narcissists hate. It creates a boundary they can't argue with. This sentence works because it disrupts their entire strategy. Narcissists thrive on pulling you into circular conversations where they constantly shift the goalposts. They might start with a minor criticism, escalate to a full argument, then flip to playing the victim, all in the same interaction. But when you say, "I'm not available for this conversation," you're refusing to play their game. You're signaling that their tactics no longer work on you. You're in control of your energy, your time, and your emotional space. The beauty of this phrase is its versatility. Whether they're trying to start an argument, guilt trip you, gaslight you, or bait you into explaining yourself for the 100th time, this sentence serves as a clean, firm exit, and it doesn't leave room for debate. Important note, at first, a narcissist may not respond well to this boundary. They may escalate, mock your calmness, or accuse you of being avoidant. That's because they sense they're losing control, and that terrifies them. Your job isn't to manage their reaction, it's to protect your peace. Margaret, a 68-year-old woman from Texas, used this sentence with her manipulative sister after decades of toxic family gatherings. The first time I said it, she laughed and called me dramatic. The second time, she got angry and accused me of being cold, but I kept using it, and something shifted. She stopped calling me with her manufactured crises. She realized I wasn't available to be her emotional dumping ground anymore. The science, this sentence works because it's what psychologists call a gray rock technique. You become uninteresting, unreactive, and unavailable for drama. Narcissists need emotional supply to function, and when you consistently refuse to provide it, they often move on to easier targets. The sentence doesn't just protect you, it empowers you. It reminds you that you don't have to show up to every fight you're invited to. You don't have to justify your feelings or explain your truth to someone who has no intention of hearing it. Practice tip. Say this sentence out loud to yourself several times. Practice keeping your voice calm and steady. The power isn't just in the words, it's in your confident delivery. For a narcissist, this kind of quiet, confident refusal is deeply unsettling because it means you've stopped trying to win them over, you've stopped needing their approval, and that is what truly makes them fear you. Why consistency is your ultimate weapon. Consistency is what transforms a single powerful sentence into a complete shift in your relationship dynamic. It's not one conversation or one moment of clarity that dismantles their control over you. It's your quiet, repeated refusal to engage on their terms that creates lasting change. Narcissists operate in predictable cycles. They provoke, manipulate, charm, and guilt. Then repeat the process. They're constantly testing you, trying to see if they can still get a reaction, if you'll bend your boundaries, if you're still emotionally available for their games. When you break this cycle consistently, not just once, but repeatedly, you send a message that speaks louder than any argument ever could. Emotional consistency, staying calm, neutral, and firm every single time, completely confuses them. They're used to creating chaos and watching others unravel. Consider the story of William, a 75-year-old retired engineer who dealt with a narcissistic neighbor for over a decade. This man would pick fights over everything: where I park my car, how I trim my hedges, the volume of my television. For years, I'd get drawn into these ridiculous arguments, trying to reason with him. The turning point came when William decided to respond the same way every single time. "I understand you're upset. I'm not available to discuss this right now." He used this response for 6 months straight. Regardless of what his neighbor said or did, at first, he got even more aggressive, banging on my door, leaving angry notes. But I stuck to my response. Eventually, he stopped trying. He realized he couldn't get the emotional reaction he was looking for, so he found other people to bother. The psychology, consistency works because it eliminates what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement. When you sometimes react and sometimes don't, you actually strengthen their behavior because they keep trying to hit the jackpot of your emotional response. This doesn't mean you never feel frustrated, hurt, or angry. You will. But the key is what you do with those emotions. Do you lash out and get pulled back into their cycle? Or do you acknowledge how you feel and still choose to respond with intention? Remember, consistency isn't about perfection. It's about commitment. It's about showing up for yourself again and again, even when it's difficult. The more consistent you are, the more you start to trust your own decisions. You stop second-guessing what you saw, felt, or experienced. That inner trust is a massive threat to a narcissist because it means you're no longer dependent on them to define reality. Over time, your consistency becomes your protection. It keeps you from slipping back into old roles. The caretaker, the fixer, the peacekeeper. It stops the narcissist from pulling you into yet another fake reconciliation or manufactured crisis. What truly breaks a narcissist's control isn't a single moment of confrontation. It's your ongoing decision to put yourself first, to act from clarity instead of reactivity, and to be unwavering in your commitment to your own peace. Final reflection. If you've made it this far, you're already taking the first step toward reclaiming your power. Understanding narcissistic behavior isn't about becoming cynical or closed off from genuine relationships. It's about developing the wisdom to recognize manipulation and the strength to protect yourself from it. The sentence "I'm not available for this conversation" isn't magic words that will instantly transform every difficult relationship in your life, but it is a tool that, when used consistently and with conviction, can create profound change in how others treat you and how you see yourself. Remember Sarah, the retired teacher who spent 15 years apologizing for things she didn't do. She's now living peacefully, surrounded by people who respect her boundaries and value her insights. Robert, the grandfather who dreaded phone calls with his son, now has a relationship with him that, while not perfect, no longer drains his energy or makes him question his worth. These changes didn't happen overnight. They required courage, consistency, and a willingness to prioritize their own peace over keeping others comfortable. But the transformation was worth every difficult moment. You deserve relationships built on mutual respect, not power struggles. You deserve to trust your own perceptions and feelings. You deserve to have your boundaries honored, not constantly challenged. Most importantly, you deserve to spend your precious energy on people and activities that bring you joy, not on managing someone else's emotional chaos. The next time someone tries to pull you into their drama, tries to make you question your reality, or refuses to respect your clearly stated boundaries, you now have the tools to respond differently. You can choose calm over chaos, boundaries over explanations, and your peace over their approval. That choice, made consistently over time, is what transforms you from someone who can be manipulated into someone who cannot be controlled. And that transformation is what narcissists fear most. A person who knows their worth and refuses to settle for less. Take a moment to reflect on your own relationships. Where might you need to set clearer boundaries? Who in your life consistently leaves you feeling drained, confused, or questioning yourself? These insights are valuable gifts you can give yourself. Your next step: practice saying "I'm not available for this conversation" out loud until it feels natural. Write it down and keep it somewhere you can see it. Remember, the power isn't just in the words, it's in your commitment to honoring them. If this message resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is help others recognize their own strength. And if you found value in this insight, consider subscribing for more content about building healthier relationships and reclaiming your personal power. You have everything you need to create the peaceful, respectful relationships you deserve. The question isn't whether you're capable of change. It's whether you're ready to begin.